I appreciate that.
So yeah, I definitely did want to get that information out there. I was hoping that your co-host would show up here. I did send her an invitation, so she might pop in a little bit later. Um, if some people don't know, Bob is on Ham Nation. You can see him every Wednesday evening. Hamnation.com, I believe, is the website, or Twit TV. Of course, I don't have the URL in front of me, but it's a good place to catch him. And obviously, Bob needs no introduction. You guys all know who he is, probably a little bit better than I do. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Bob.
Okay, everybody. Well, thank you for inviting me. I really love to attend these club meetings. I used to do it live when we could do that, but anymore it's not possible. However, I found one good thing about COVID and the fact that it's brought ham radio closer together. The club meetings are being attended greater, and now we can do these kind of things. And I love sharing a hobby. I've been in the hobby since 56. And what I want to do, with your permission, I'm going to spend about, how much time do we have, by the way? Are you on a time schedule? Because,
As much time as you want.
oh, okay. Because this will run probably an hour and 15 to do it all.
You're
This-
good.
Okay, very good. Because I do some history of where I came from, but then we're going to get into the rock and roll scene and the TVRO scene, and then finally into some really heavy things like Bell Lab studies and stuff like that. Make your station sound better. So, with that,
Don't be afraid to talk about the oldest ham too.
well, it's probably me. I just turned 80. So, I know I look like I'm 50 and act like I'm 12, but that's okay.
Hey, Bob,
Yes.
I got you beat. I'm 89.
There you go. And you don't look it. See, there you go. Oh, well, let's get rocking and rolling here. The title is deceiving because you might have a better title for it, but we'll get rocking and you'll see what I'm talking about. Well, first we're going to do a little history. Uh, my my adult life started pretty early. In 1950, I started playing accordion. 2 years later, my parents bought me a B3 Hammond. That was something because they weren't wealthy and they figured that I needed it. But 2 years later, I had taught myself how to play. I got a job in a restaurant making $50 a weekend in 54. In 1956, I became the substitute organist at the Fox Theater. Now, why I take this time to tell you, you're going to hear this throughout the hour. That was very important to me because that organ at the Fox in St. Louis had not been played in about 20 years. And the organist there who hired me, Stan Can, he became my mentor. I was his protege. We had to tune and voice about 2,000 pipes on one floor and a couple thousand on the other. These things were from 1 inch to 32 foot. And let me tell you, this was something because you had to learn how to listen. Listening is so important, and a lot of people really don't know how to listen. And we're going to do that tonight. We're going to get into that. Listening is a mental process. Keep that in mind, and we'll come back to that. There was my first station in 1956. One of my high school chums got a license. I thought, well, maybe I'll join you. I was very busy with my organ career, and the first station had a Harvey Wells in it, and that Harvey Wells is still working. I love AM, and every morning down there you'll see that Harvey Wells. It's still in original shape, original tubes. And the only thing I don't use the VFO, I use a Haggerty VFO built by my friend Wayne WA4FTY, and that way it's not going to drift. But anyway, I'm still there doing it and having way, way, way more fun than I probably should have. But the Harvey's still with me and still working. But Gonset ruled in those days. If you guys are around, the civil defense ones there on the right, and they were quite something. We had good things going on with VHF because the band was open all the time. But one day I'm listening around. I'd only been on the air just a few weeks, and I hear this signal, and it's terrible. Oh, what kind of distortion is this? Next night, I heard the same thing. So I got real brave and called him. And for some of the new guys that weren't around in those days, you might hear some of us old devil call CQ, and we'll say CQ and tuning. Well, the reason, well, we were crystal controlled. So somebody might answer you on a different crystal up or down the band. So you had to tune for them that was calling you. I called him, and that horrible signal came back to me. I could kind of recognize it. I turned the BFO on in my new receiver. I didn't know what that was. And all of a sudden it cleaned up. Whoa, that's that single sideband stuff that I had been reading about in QST on 6 meters. Whoa. Well, I got into this hobby at the right time because the bands were open almost 24/7. I was a technician for 17 years. I didn't need to go to 20 meters. And I had such a great time. But I talked to Larry every night. I was 50 miles from him, and he was just building this sideband rig for 6 meters. And he was so thrilled because nobody else would talk to him. I was enamored. I thought, this is pretty cool. Well, he invited me to stop and see him at his workplace because I told him I'd come in to play at the Fox a couple of times a week. So he gave me his address. I rolled up in front of that address, and it was KMOX radio. I'm going, what is this all about? I go in and ask for Larry. Well, we have several Larrys here, son. I said, is he ham radio? Oh, you're talking about Larry Burroughs. Well, Larry Burroughs was the chief there at CBS, and he took me under his wing. And that particular day we met, hey, that is really cool what you're doing. Would you build me one of those? No, I can't do that for you. And I go, what do you mean you can't do that? You did, but I'm going to teach you how. And he did. It was the start of my building career. And what we did, I went out and bought a kit of Central Electronics. God bless Wes Shum. He was the guy that brought sideband to amateur radio. If you did a trivia contest and asked who did it, everybody would probably say Art Collins. He was 6 years late. Wes Shum did it in 1948. Well, this was one of his first transmitters, and the transmitter was a kit. You could get it fully built, but Larry said, no, you build it. So I did. Now, you understand, I'd only been a ham less than a couple of months. We took out the 20-meter coil. Well, we never put it in, but he taught me how to use a grid meter, and we wound a 6-meter coil. Cool. Plugged it back in. Now what do you got? Well, we have to get to 50 megacycles. So he taught me how to build a 6U8 oscillator with a little 9 meg, and double it up, bingo, there you go, 50 megacycles. So that was my first single sideband transmitter and the first thing that I had built. Then I got crazy. I mean, I really went crazy in building. The station grew very fast. You can see the sideband transmitter on the left. It's a Heathkit Seneca. I just built that from a kit, and on and on. But I also was into antennas big time. I had the most lovingly parents. Oh my gosh. They allowed me to put up a 110-foot Roan. And on top of that was a 36 long 50 meg Telerex spiral array. On top of that, you'll see 432. That didn't last long. I didn't care for that one. I was a 6-meter freak. And the spiral array was interesting. We're going to really get into this in a little while. You see, your signals, when it leaves, I don't care what frequency it is, and I don't care what kind of antenna it is. If it leaves horizontal, it doesn't ever stay that way. That's why you have a lot of fading, and you think, oh my gosh, he must have lost his power. He faded that power. No, He changed polarity. Your signals they're out there rotating all the time. And so Telerex built this spiral array, and you'll notice that some of the elements are horizontal and they come into vertical. And it really did help. There wasn't as much QSB as a normal flat antenna horizontal, because I had one of those also. So away we went. I said, I'm going to try this on 2 meters. And I put up a pair of their 35-foot long, 15 elements. I have one vertical and one horizontal. And back down in the shack, I was able to switch them by using switching in different phasing lines. And I learned a lot about antennas and phasing. It was remarkable what was going on in my day, because I didn't know. I was a kid. I was 18 years old, and I wasn't an engineer, but I was doing all these crazy things. And my parents would allow me. I had two different other towers up, and God bless them. But I was learning things, and that was the whole thing. Is they allowed me to do things that they knew I was learning. I didn't go to high school every day because I was playing the organ, making a good living. I went an assigned number of days, and that was about it. I did graduate, but not very good grades. But I was already working, and I had a career in front of me. The next thing I did in 1959, I built a 6 and 2 Thunderbolt amplifier, put about a kilowatt and a half on those two bands. And you can see the central electronics above my head there. And I had a pretty mean signal on the 6 meters with the 110-foot Roan and all the Telerexes and so on. And one day I get a call, and the call came in, and it was Bob Drake of the Drake Company. Go, whoa, Mr. Drake, honored that you call me. He said, well, are you the guy that's got that kilowatt on the VHF? And I said, yes, sir. He said, well, we have a meeting here in our club. We do it once a year. It's a technical meeting. And we would like for you to come and explain how you made that whole station, the single sideband and so on, because I was very, very new. And okay, this is great. And one of my friends there locally in Marissa, Illinois, had a Bonanza airplane. He said, you know, I've heard about that meeting. I think we should go. So he flew me out. Out we went to the Biltmore Hotel. And what they did is they took all the furniture out of one floor, and they had the Collins room, the Hallicrafter room, the Drake room, and all of these guys were there. These were like movie stars to me because I had been reading about them in the magazines, and they were all showing their wares, and then they would have technical forums. And I got to tell you, I was scared as ever because I'm talking to all these what I thought engineers at the time. That Biltmore Hotel was in downtown Dayton, Ohio. That became the Dayton Hamvention. There were 600 people there. Later on in 1974, they moved out to Hare Arena, but there's the history of the Hamvention. While I was there, I had this guy from the UK come to me. He'd sit through my workshop, and he said, we're looking for somebody like you. Would you mind being a test station for one of our new antennas? Hey, yeah, I'd be honored that. So he sent the antenna out for me to put up, and that antenna was 128 elements on 2 meters. And I told you I had these wonderful, beautiful parents. We had a spare lot beside our house, had a big old Victorian house, but right beside it was a spare lot. So we put up it was a 50-foot Roan, and used the 50-foot Roan as a boom. And the Motorola dealer there in Sparta, Illinois, just south of Marissa, we're all about 50 miles south of St. Louis in those days. He helped me put it together along with K9 EBA, who was a construction guy. And he had a crane and all kinds of stuff. They actually put that antenna up. and followed all the directions. And I was right with him. But man, let me tell you, that was a learning curve. Had two prop pitch motors, you can see there by my head, so I could turn it and I could also point it to the moon. And I did several moon bounce things with a guy by the name of Bob Cooper. Write this down. Don't forget it because he's coming back in a big way here in about 20 minutes. Bob Cooper was in Oklahoma City and he was doing moon bounce with me in 1962. So we moved on. But in 1962, I built the first band switching transverter. See it there on the left, and driven by the central electronics. I had put the central electronics back on 20 meters. In fact, that's a whole different one. That's a 20A, driving the kilowatt. So I had a pretty pretty stout station, and I just loved all of these things that was going on at the time. And CQ in 1962 started a column that I wrote for them called VHF Single Sideband. Now, that was very interesting because it was not a big deal until this came along and people wanted to know about it. And Richard thought that it was something that they needed to capitalize on. So I became the editor of the sideband column, and that was fantastic. We had all kinds of guys writing articles and stations, but we also had a moon bounce thing because moon bounce was a big deal then too for a few. Where I wrote also for VHF Amateur, but then Joe Hall, the Motorola dealer, he really was happy with my transfer I was building. He said, "You need to put these on the market," and so he did. He started a company. His name was Hall, Joe Hall, Hallert. And I built them and he sold them. And they were transferters, the first transferters out there, one on 6 meters, one on two. We also had a matching amplifier with an 829B. We could get 100 watts out of there. This was big time stuff. And I was right in the middle of it. And I can't tell you what a thrill it was. But amateur radio was my college professor. I'm building all this stuff and learning all these things. Well, it was all because of ham radio. Well, at the same time, from 1959 through 66, I'm playing the organ at the Holiday Inn in St. Louis. There was a four-star restaurant in that Holiday Inn. It was the largest Holiday Inn in the chain. It had 600 rooms on one floor out by the airport. Where the space capsule, the original Mercury capsule, was being built across the street at McDonald. Mosley Antenna was across the street also. But anyway, I built and installed a pipe organ in this four-star German restaurant there. And we had people from all over the country come and spend the weekend so they could hear that. It was very unique. And I was there for several years. But one of the nice things about it, it was 50 miles from Marissa, and I drove this every day. And man, did I have fun with my mobiles. I had a brand new 60 Thunderbird, and I had gotten a Swan 20 meter. It was 240, I think, or what they had just come out with it. They sent it to me to review for the magazine. It was a 20 meter one. Okay, I did my review, but then I went in and modified it and put in the converter so it could work on 6 meters. Anyway, it was 50 miles each way. I had all kinds of contacts. It was really fun. You'll see one of my later things back in the 70s. It was a Thunderbird with a KWM1 in it, a 1956 Bird with a 1956 Collins. And golly, if you can't have fun, don't do it. Well, I had gotten tired of playing all those 12, 13 years. So I started a little music shop in Marissa, my hometown. You see my dad down there in that door in the white shirt waving. I didn't know he was in that picture till some years later. Anyway, I opened a Hammond organ store. What else did I know? I knew Hammonds well, customized them and doing church and school installs and a lot of home organs. But I'm getting all kinds of people coming in doing asking questions about it. But the bands there discovered there was this guy with a soldering iron. And one day, what started it all, here comes this guy in, and he had this box, and he throws it on the counter, and he said, "You fix things here?" And I said, "Well, maybe." What do you got? Well, I got my guitar amplifier. I had never seen a guitar amplifier. I know that's hard to believe, but it's true. I was dead, dyed in the wool, Hammond organ, and Wurlitzer theater organ. But he brought this thing, turned it upside down, and said, "Hey, it's broke." I figured, aha. Well, here comes ham radio for us. It had a pair of 6L6s and it had a 5U4. Well, now, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Had a 6L6 and a 5U4, huh? Um, that's what's in the audio of the Harvey Wells. I knew the circuit well. And a ham does not throw anything away. So I go back in my junk box and I had a pair of 6L6s and a 5U4. Took about 15 minutes. Had to change the screen resistor, didn't I? Yeah, you know why. He had tried to make it go to 12 and it only went to 10. He blew it up. Well, he was going to take the screen resistors and he did. So I fixed it all. They were thrilled. Wow. And the word got around. And we're talking about people like REO Speedwagon, Michael McDonald, Danny Fogelberg, on and on. But REO wasn't even formed yet. They were still in high school, but they were driving to Marissa because they heard about me and the fact that I could help them. And I started carrying a lot of very special guitars and amplifiers. And it really did become the rock and roll capital of the world in the 70s. And I was just having a big time because I never knew who was going to walk in that door. But what happened was I started renting B3s, Hammond B3s, to Concert Hall in St. Louis. I discovered that they were in serious needs of sound system because their sound systems were terrible. But that's when, again, ham radio kicked in and bingo, away we went. The Fox had thrown out some big old speakers. I was able to resurrect them and I built some fiberglass horns because I knew a guy that had a fiberglass shop there. And we started building these sound systems. Well, I built that one for Kiel Auditorium when we'd go up there and do take the Hammond organ up. And we're talking about people like Dolly, Jerry Lee Lewis, Buck Owens, Porter Wagner, on and on and on, little Jimmy Dickens. They had a lot of country acts come in, but they were absolutely going crazy over my PA system because they had never heard anything like that. I didn't know that. How did I know it? I wasn't in all of that. I didn't know because you're looking at a guy that has never tasted beer. I have never smoked a cigarette. For gosh sakes, never done drugs. And it ended up, I was running around with some pretty strange characters, but I had the soldering iron and they always respected me. They didn't do that nonsense when they were around me because they knew I could help them. And that was quite a neat thing in my life. I get a call one day from the Fox Theater in 1970. He said, it was George Bales, the guy that used to bring the organ up and down out of the pit when I was playing there years before. He said, "You still have those big speakers that I gave you?" And I said, "I do." "Do they work?" I said, "Yes, sir. I got them all working." He said, "Talk to this guy. Guy came in here today at 4 o'clock and they don't have any equipment." He turns the phone over to Jerry Garcia. Now, for all of you rock historians, you know what's coming. Here's the story. You can verify this by going onto Google and putting in "the night rock and roll sound was born." They were, their sound man owned their equipment and he was on probation. He wasn't supposed to be out of the state of California. I wonder why. And they thought they'd do a little 6 city tour, New Orleans, St. Louis, on up through to New Jersey. Well, the FBI got wind of that. They go to the concert at the warehouse in New Orleans, sat in the back row. After the show was over, the band comes on to St. Louis. They didn't have cell phones in 1970. So, everything's cool. We'll see you there, Owsley. Okay. After he loaded the truck, padlocked the back of the truck, they padlocked him. Bingo. Off to California he went. Well, the band gets into St. Louis, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, crawls up on the stage of the Fox Theater. My beloved mother, I grew up at the Fox, and here they were. And Jerry said, "Hey, man," he says, "you got a big PA." And I said, "Well, yeah, it's pretty good. What do you got?" And I told him I had Olson bins, JBL horns, drivers, and radio horns, 60 degree, 9 degree, had a Longin mixer, da da da. He said, "What? You have all this stuff?" Because it was very unusual. I didn't know that. And what do you have for amps? I said, Macintosh. He didn't even let me finish the sentence. "You have Macintosh amps?" And I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "You got to get all that up here." I said, "Well, I can't be there before probably 9 o'clock." That's okay. We'll take care of them. They did. That was really cool. When I walked in the back of the theater, here was the Grateful Dead sitting on top of the seats out. There's a 5,000 seat of Fox Theater. They were sitting up on top of them, playing and singing. Well, we loaded the stuff in, and bingo, it was the night rock and roll sound was born, because this is just a small, I don't even have a picture of all of that. Here's some of the monitor stuff and so on we did for them. They absolutely loved it. And we took out on the rest of the tour for them. And what had happened there was that hit the front page of Billboard magazine, that this little music shop in Marissa, Illinois, a coal mine in southern Illinois, got the contract. Well, I didn't, I'm just a ham doing things. And I started getting phone calls, all kinds of phone calls. But we went out on tours with all kinds of guys and really good people. And Jethro Tull, Jeff Beck, Joan Baez, Humble Pie. Now I want you to pay attention to that Humble Pie picture. There's a guy in there on the left side of that picture, got on like a white shirt, it's got black in the front, kind of long. That is a 17-year-old Peter Frampton. He came over here with Humble Pie as a lead guitarist. We are going to talk much more about him in a few minutes. But then there was this group we traveled with. Who's this group? Nobody ever guesses it, ever, because that was their first tour that we did with them. They wanted they wanted a PA that was loud. Their manager called me, because we're getting all these calls from the Billboard thing. He says, "I got this little band from Texas and they're really loud." Well, that is ZZ Top without beards. So there you go. That's the history. But we're still working with them. They still use our microphones. They become really good friends. And I love all these guys, because they're not what you would think sometimes. Well, I got another phone call. And the guy said, you got to get out here quick. And I said, "Wait a minute. Who's this?" He said, "This is the Who." I said, "The Who?" "Yeah, you got to be in Boston tomorrow." I said, "We can't do that." I said, "It's impossible. We're in Chicago with the gear with Chaka Khan. I don't care who you're with. You get out here." I said, "I couldn't even drive it." So I had a friend in Chicago that took the rest of Chaka's dates. He said, "You go out to the airport and you rent a 707. Just go to the Flying Tigers, Tiger Air Freight. They can drive your semi right into the back." We were the first company. There again, straight man in a crazy world. Up until that time, a whole bunch of Volkswagen vans and pickup trucks, and, and some of the gear would get there and some wouldn't. And straight man in that world, I said, "No, no, no." So I rented and there was only 40-foot semis, and we could put everything in there. Well, the managers loved me, because it all got there at the same time and they could get set up and the show went on. Well, anyway, how are you going to do that? We went out, and it's the only time I ever rented a Tiger Air Freight. But we flew up to Boston. And again, it was another one of those historic nights with the Who. They were starting this new tour with new music. And it was wonderful. Did a couple of years of that tour, and they were going to take a year off. And I get a call from Pete one day. He says, "Hey, Pete Townsend." He said, you got to come here. I got an idea. You need to come to my studio," which was up above his home on the Thames. And he said, I got new music. And right now, quad sound is big. Do you think you could build a PA that we could move Roger's voice around an arena? No, it's not in my vocabulary. So we did to let you really hear what's going on with Pete Townsend. I bet you recognize this. It was done in that studio you're looking at. That's Baba O'Reilly. And what's really crazy, and I was just going nuts when I visited his home, and we had such a good time. You see up in that right corner, he's in front of a little $1,000 home Lowry organ. That's what he used tied into that synthesizer to do that entrance. Baba O'Reilly. Oh man, we just had so much fun. Well, we had just started building a new console. We had a sister company in England, IES, and we were both working together so that if I went to England, he had the big speakers, he'd come over here, we had the big speaker, and we could do that kind of thing. But we were working on a console. Nobody had really built a good console yet. And we were doing it, and it was not too late that we could do 4 channels and it could work as a quad mixer, and it did. So it was really fun to be at the bottom of all these things in the beginning of some really serious rock and roll music. Yeah, that's me. That's not a wig. I didn't have to do what they did, but I had to look like them, I thought. But we did wonderful things. We had stage layouts for them. We did things really way above what was going on in those days. There's my favorite picture. Some photographer took that. But here's why I show you that. You notice that speaker has a Heil name on it. That's a 250-foot mid-range driver right into Peter's ear. And there's another one, it's hard to see, behind Mooney the drummer. They were monitors, and they weren't feeding back. Wait a minute. Well, Heil Sound was the first to build stage monitors that didn't feed back. How did I do that? It was all because of ham radio. All, and you're going to learn that here in a little bit. There they are. There was about 1,000 watts of power in those monitors, not more than 6 or 8, 10 feet from them, and they didn't feed back. And I was really pleased. We had a wonderful relationship for 6, 7 years with the Who, and still do. I talk to Pete quite often, but we then started going crazy. I had built a new building, and Marissa had started building things. Again, ham radio. We built modular mixers. If a group was out and channel 9 went out, you didn't close up and go home. When you bought it, we gave you a spare module, and you could fix it, as well as the power amps and all of that. We had 35 employees producing all of these great things, again, that I had come up with because of ham radio. And we had our own fiberglass. We had our own wood shop. My brother-in-law ran that. There you see on the bottom lower left, they were building talk boxes, which we're going to talk about. And so we had a lot of things going on in that 1970 to 80 period. That line up in the right, that's still there. We're building microphones on that same line, believe it or not. And there it is in the lower left, Rick, and lower right, some of those pictures. But the main thing was that we were building large sound systems and became pretty well known about it. Big arena systems, as well as smaller ones. But we met up with this guy because we were doing the James Gang. And that was really something interesting. That guy is Joe Walsh, if no one knows. It was a great friendship that we started, and it was all because of ham radio. But Joe said, I got this new group, and I want you to help me get it set up. Barnstorm, okay? But he said, I was in a studio in Nashville, and I recorded one of these songs for this. And they he had a friend, Bill and Dottie West, and they had given him this little box with a little speaker and a little hose in it. And it was an early talk box, but it was only for recording. It wasn't very loud, but for recording, it would be fine. He said, we gotta look into that. So I did. Well, I had been talking on 20 meters for some time before that. Every noon, W6 UK would come on 20 meters. That was the Alvino Ray, great guitarist of the King family. In 1939, Alvino Ray had come up with a way that he could do a similar thing. Now, I got to understand, this is 1939, and he wanted to do this effect with his wife. So what he did is he got an old throat microphone. You know what I'm talking about. One of these things they used in World War II airplanes and then beyond, because they were so loud in those cockpits, a microphone wouldn't work. So they had two carbon elements. So he put this baby on his wife's throat, and instead of plugging it in like for a microphone, he plugged the output of his guitar amp here. So when he would play the guitar and she would sing, it would modulate her voice and make it sound like the guitar was singing. And it was a very popular thing in 1939. He had several hit records with that. And see, I learned a lot about that talking to him on 20 meters each day. Well, I had the basis of it, but we had to do it big and loud for Joe. So I had the fiberglass guys build me a little box there on the left. You'll see it. It actually was a muffler for a fan for a phase linear amplifier. We put an end in it, and we could mount a driver. And we mounted a 250-watt driver in that thing. High pass filter, bingo, talk box. What you see on the right is the current production today. It's in steel. But that started the whole talk box thing. And Rocky Mountain Way became very, very, very popular. And I'm sure, come on here. I'm sure you've heard that. Okay, there we go. I'm sure that you remember some of the things that Joe did with Rocky Mountain. Also was Peter Frampton. Now, that's an interesting story, and I'm about done with all the history here, but I'm sure that some of you would like to hear this one. He had a girlfriend. Her name was Penny McCall, married in our home in Marissa in 1973, 74 it was. She called me one day and says, "Hey, I need a Christmas present for Peter. I'm with Peter Frampton. Don't send him a guitar because he got a lot of them." So what did I do? I sent her a talk box. You can write the rest of that story.
Yeah.
And here is the talk
Turn the
box.
monitors off.
This was a live sound check.
Do you feel like we do? Do you understand? Oh, oh, right, all right, all right.
That's just like talking. Take the wind out yourself.
It was very, very cool that we were able to do some of those things for Peter and Bon Jovi and Slash and so many more. It was quite something, and who would have thought it? Well, you remember I talked about moon bounce activity. We're going to move into some of the things for you here at Ham Radio. Really had a beginning for me. I had been talking to this guy, we just did experiments a few times. We weren't every day moon bounce stuff. 1962, nobody was doing a lot. The guy was in Oklahoma City. His name was Bob Cooper. For many of you, you might know him. He's a very famous guy. Why? Because Bob Cooper was the guy that single-handedly started the TVRO revolution. We're talking about home satellite. He would hold in his backyard in Oklahoma City once a month on a Saturday classes to teach hams, TV dealers, and so on, this new thing of receiving satellite from 22,000 miles. Who better than a ham to do that, right? And so he would teach us how to take a Folgers coffee can, build an LNA, go buy a surplus dish, the little 6-footer, bingo, pointed to the sky, boom, you got TV. Now HBO and all these guys didn't know about this. That was kind of an interesting thing because he called them one day and said, "Hey, I think I need to pay you guys something because I'm seeing you in Oklahoma." And they said, "That's not possible." Well, yeah, and he played back on the phone. Well, anyway, it was possible, and went on for a good 6 or 8 years until they finally figured out around it. But I got really involved in it in the late '70s. I I had sold my sound company. I'd really got tired of being on the road all the time, and a lot of my good acts had just kind of went in hibernation. So I'm building, and we put in thousands of these things in Southern Illinois because I tell people this and they don't believe me. There were people in the bottom of the state, down in Springfield and long and through, not Carbondale, that didn't have television. They were 100 miles from TV stations. And this was a way they could get television. I took one of my Thunderbirds and I had a dish that fold up like an umbrella, and I could do a test. We had to do a test at every site because AT&T had some 4 gig stuff running through the country, and if you were in line with one of those, forget it, you couldn't have it. So that was a fun thing. And I also got into the direct TV thing. We were on the test bed of that for about 8 years before it started. They had me be one of the 10 to do a test set. And we were the first dealer to have them. And that what you see is the vice president. He and I installed the first direct TV in a home in West County, St. Louis. On the right, that's Heil Sound today. The front door of it, it's much, much larger today. But because of that opening, that was the official opening of the direct TV. They sent in their inflatable dogs. I was also in KMOX for 25 years, talking about ham radio, satellite television, and high-tech toys or whatever. W0NJB and I every Wednesday night on that 50,000 watt blowtorch. But these were all fun things that I did. I also got into home theater because, wait a minute, we had these great pictures, but we were listening on 3-inch speakers. I said, I don't think so. And what you see in the top right, I was building real home theaters, and we moved on up to Today Show in 1995. It was their Christmas pick. And there's a DirecTV dish that we did. And I did from the floor of CES. We did the announcement on ABC that it's here. We've been talking about it for years. It's here. And that was all the kickoff on that. But I was doing serious home theater, Macintosh, all kinds of clip speakers, phase linear, stuff like that. And we were actually building rooms like you see here. That room was a $300,000 room. I mean, this wasn't just a junky little Best Buy thing. This was the real deal. And doing high def in those days with the laser disc. But one of the guys I worked with, he helped me build one of the other consoles, was Tomlinson Holman. Tom had just graduated from the University of Illinois, came to Marissa and helped me before he ever was out on the workforce. And we became really good friends. I went up to Skywalker Ranch. He became one of the engineers for George Lucas and designed THX, Tomlinson Holman Experiment. And I was at the ranch a couple of times, and these were just great things. One of the shows we did, Ray Dolby brought in his ProLogic receiver. He said, I'd like for you to set this up. So okay, we will. And it was the first time anybody had heard 4 channels from 2 wires. And it was just a fascinating time. Had a gal come into me one day and she says, I have this 100-year-old house. Can you do something with your home theater? Well, no, it's my vocabulary. That's what I did for her. Back there in the corner with that drape back in there, that was that room. And so we were doing a number of these things. That room became that room, and had a lot of designers and stuff. But after 12 years, I said, that's it. Get back. I'm going to go back to radio. And I did. However, what happened to my great Art Collins audio? I was going nuts. I said, what's going on here? And the answer I would get would be, well, I got my Kenwood, my matching microphone. Well, why do you sound so bad? Well, Bill said I sound fine. You're muffled. I don't understand you. You don't have any articulation. Well, yeah, they all say it sounds good. Well, this is how you sound. And I'm going, what do I have to do now? Whoa, that's what I heard. And well, it's a matching microphone. Well, I'll let you hear this matching microphone. Not only does it have terrible, terrible audio as far as articulation, but it has no transient response. It didn't have any dynamic range. Oh, baby, but it was matching. Huh. Okay, I'm going to change it. All I'm doing. I have to change the gain. Have any gain, but what happened? The dynamic range was gone. No articulation. You had no way to adjust it if you wanted it. So what are you going to do? Well, you lived with it, and they still do. There's matched microphone. It was terrible. Now all I'm going to do, I gotta set the gain down a little bit. I'm just changing microphones. And I don't have to ask you what an incredible difference. The F, the S's, the P's, the B's, they're all there. They weren't there. Huh. But it was matching. The only matching is it was painted the same color. Trust me on this. Because later on in my life, I started working for all these companies. And I said, well, we got to do something about this. And nobody was doing anything. I discovered these companies do not make their own microphone. They just have it made, put their name on it, and they've fooled you forever. Well, those times are over. After tonight, you're going to learn a whole bunch of things that you're going to agree with me. How come nobody knew this before? Well, a few of us did. I get a call one day that changed my life, and it will change some of yours if it hasn't already. It was Paul Klipsch. Who is Paul Klipsch? Paul Klipsch was the father of hi-fi. He was the father of the folded horn. He said, "Did that you the guy that's got that 10,000 watt PA?" I said, "Yes, sir." "Yeah, I want to come and see it." So he got in his Bonanza and he flew up to Marissa, Illinois. And all day, he's much taller than I. And I thought, oh man, he's going to cut me off at the knees. No, he didn't. Well, how come you do this? How come you did that? What I found out later, he was on a trip to find out what I was doing. Why didn't he know about all that? Because he was the audio guru. Well, he put me in his plane, took me back down to Hope, Arkansas that night, his home. And oh my gracious, I can't tell you. I just can't tell you how it changed my life and a lot of yours. Because what he did, he's guided me to the studies of Bell Labs. And that's referred to as the idea factory of the 1920s. Bell Labs was a consolidation of AT&T and Western Electric. Western was the manufacturing arm of the Bell system. And the manufacturing arm, of course, as you know, built the telephones and all that kind of stuff. But they had a problem. And they put 4,000 scientists. Now, this is just not making this up. 4,000 scientists and engineers were assigned to this newly created Bell Telephone Labs. It was fully dedicated, now listen up, to researching how our ears worked and what frequencies were most important for us to understand the spoken word. And I was just mesmerized when I started studying all of this. And it was difficult. You had to really dig at the library and stuff today you go to Google and it's all done. No, it was true, but nobody had ever talked to us about it. And what are we talking about? Well, they set up the telephone system, and they had two wires that went from New York across America, and every 50 miles was a relay station to keep the frequency up, keep the voltage up. And when they got out to the coast, this is what they heard. It's like, what happened here? Please. Everything's okay. Voltage is good. Everything's in line. Frequencies are good. Why can't we understand each other? So they put Dr. Fletcher and Dr. Munson on the curve. And this is what they discovered. They discovered that the human ear is not flat. Every once in a while, I get somebody want to argue about this. There is no argument. Trust me. In fact, if you'll notice at the top, when things are about 100 plus dB, it's kind of flat. That's why kids like to listen to their music loud, because they can hear all the cymbals, all the mid-range guitars and vocals, all of the bass note. They can hear that all. But look down here where we're watching 30 dB or so rooms. Whew. It's like a ride at Disneyland. But what else did they discover? Maximum speech articulation. All they were worried about was what was going to happen from 300 to 3,000. That's where the telephone system was. And what they discovered is what I just proved to you. And I should put a camera on this someday. All I am doing is I'm turning one knob, mid-range, and I'm going to bring up 2.5, or to take it out. I got 2.5K. I'm going to take it out. If you don't have 2.5K elevated, you have a problem. Well, let's put it back in there. And you see, all ham radios came from the factory flat. And so that's why I went berserk trying to figure it out. It's like, what happened here? What's the problem? Well, the problem was what we're looking at on the screen. We had to elevate 2.5K, as I just proved to you. And so I went to work. And I built the first equalizer for ham radio. Nobody had ever done anything about equalization. And I wrote an article and I sent it to the ARRL. They thought it was such a thing. They put it in the QST of July 1982, and it got the cover award. I didn't know they had cover awards. I was very honored by that. But we started a whole movement. I didn't intend to build that. I intended for you to build it. It was a how-to kit type thing. Because my plant wasn't open. We had closed our plant. So I had to call some of the girls back, the really good solder gals, and we had to start building EQ 200s. We built thousands of them. Many of you might have some still. There's a bigger story about that in just a little. But here's the deal. You had to roll off everything under 100 hertz. So I did that because when I bring up 100 hertz, it just muddies up that top end. I think you can hear that. Get rid of that 100, you take off the low end, and all of a sudden, the articulations comes. I didn't turn the articulation. I just muddied it up by too much bass. And boy, do I hear signals on the air like that today. It wastes RF energy. Maximum speech articulation occurs between 2 and 3K. That is where you want your RF power. And the proof of that was in the Fletcher Munson studies. I have the greatest demo you're never going to forget, because it's exactly what happens to your signal. Here is your signal. What are you? 100 cycles, on the low end to maybe 2.9 on the top, right? Okay, everything's even. All of that air in there is your RF. But to make it articulate, what you want to do is you want to roll off that low end. And when you do, look what happens to the mid range at 2.5K on here. All your RF is ended up at 2.5 or a great number of it. That's where I want my RF. I don't want it all down here or all up here. I want all of my maximum power at 2.5K. Yes, you want all the rest because you have to balance it. I will once again do that for you. Here it is flat, the way you guys come out of a box with one of your Kenwoods or whatever, Yaesus or any of them. It's not articulate. And for gosh sakes, with the matching microphone, it's worse because it had no dynamic range or no transient response. All I'm going to do is turn up 2.5K. That's all. And bingo, there I do. Bingo. The F and the S, they're there. The P's and the B's, they're there. Without that, I'm sorry. I didn't hear you. What'd you say? Turn up the power. Turning up the power is not going to help. But boy, certainly adjusting your equalization will. In 1999, I got a letter and it had a picture of an IC 781. Remember that great rig? That was a contester's dream rig. And beside it was one of my gold line microphones and my EQ 200. It was Dr. Inouye, the founder and president of ICOM. After I picked myself up off the floor, he wanted me to give him guidance. He was thinking of new radio, and he thought he might want to use my EQ 200. And so it was. I began in this Pro 1, Pro 2, all the way through to the 7610. And I just got this because they want me to build a headset for it. If you haven't seen this guy, oh my gosh. And guess what? It's got my equalizer in it too. And so you see, this is the new 705, 5 watts, battery powered. It's beyond what you can think about. Got it. Anyway, check it out. Anyway, I'm very pleased that I can help these people. Dr. Hasegawa, he cornered me a year later at Dayton and said, we want to do it better. So you want to do it better? We'll do a parametric. Yeah, that's good. I said, but you'll have a problem. What be the problem? Education? No, we take care of it. I said, well, you see, simple 2-band shelving. Where is it? Here it is. No big deal. Don't need an engineer to do this. All you do is you rotate what you need. It's a boost or a cut. You want to take this low, you can boost it or cut it. You can do the high over here. Well, now wait a minute. What frequencies are they? See, that's the deal. That's the deal. I set the frequencies when I designed it. How did I know to do that? Fletcher-Munson curves and lots of experiments. The low filter is set at 160 and the top filter is set at 3K. And so all you can do is boost those two or notch those two. So you're going to notch that low end and boost that high end. Real simple. But what do you do with a parametric? That has, you ready for this? 9 buttons, 9 controls. And we're going to get into this because a lot of you that have Yaesu, I bet you really don't understand it because they never taught you, but you're going to learn it tonight. I guarantee you. I could teach a 10-year-old kid in about 2 minutes. And I don't know why the manufacturers aren't helping us, but they don't. So whatever. Anyway, it's just so important to adjust the radio properly. And again, we don't even have some of that right. You adjust microphone gain by watching the ALC meter. In fact, you remember, and I hope some of you have one, the FT9000. What a delicious radio. Oh my gracious, that thing's great. I had got my way on it. It was the first one that Dr. Hasagawa and I worked on. It has, you ready for this, a 3-pin XLR balanced commercial input. Every radio should have one of these. Why? They're still unbalanced, and it burns me because they don't. He took the lead. Okay, wow. And there is no label called ALC. You paid $15,000 and there's no ALC meter. No, because I changed it. What'd you do? I just changed the label. What is it called? Mic gain. Check me out. If you ever see a 9000, look at it. Mic gain is that meter, because that's what it's about. That is how you set mic gain. You don't say, hey, Bill, how do I sound? Hey, Louie, how do I sound? No, you are the engineer and you have to do that in your station before you talk to Bill. You set it the way you like. You listen in another receiver with a pair of headphones and a dummy load. That's how you do it. And the ALC meter, you never want to see that baby laying over here on the red. You might bounce over there once in a while, but no, most of it's going to be down in the 30% or so, just flashing as you talk. Look at the meter over my head. Same thing with that. And you see, none of this is taught. And that's what freaks me out. And that's why I take incredible amounts of my time to do this. I'm not getting paid by anybody except the knowledge that I know, that I've passed on this great hobby. I've been in it 65 years and I don't want it to go away. And the only way it's not going to go away is if we all understand what we're doing and bring the new guys in and help them. They are so confused. Lay them in front of a 7610 today. What do you got? That one of the most marvelous radios out there, but man, the 7300, it's the greatest value in the world, but you gotta do something with it. But what's the other deal? You never hear about it. It's how to address a microphone. You never read or hear anything about it. Because now we're talking about science. This is not Bob Heil. This is science. When you double the distance, you lose 6 decibel. Wow, 6. Well, I wonder how many really know how loud a decibel is. Well, another thing that you're going to go away from here tonight saying, I didn't know that, but gosh, wow. I hope you're ready for this. I'm going to, let me get all hooked up here. I don't play games. These are not magic acts. I'm not here to have you go home and say, boy, that was really cool. No, I want you to go away saying, wow, I learned something. This is one of the neatest things that I can do for you. I'm going to unplug this microphone. Let me set the gain because the gain gets crazy here. Okay, here we go. I plugged it into a Y cable. Why did I do that? Because I have 2 microphones and both of them are alike. They're a PR22 that I was asked to develop for Paul Rogers of Bad Company. He wanted a microphone that had great articulation and no EQ. So I did it. Let me get this over here. So I built, come on here. I built the PR22. Both of them are alike. Now, if you had an amplifier, you're running, say, 500 watts, and you got your matching microphone, and you're not getting through the pileups because they don't understand your words, you're going to double your power. So you're going to go spend a couple of $1,000 and buy yourself a kilowatt. Okay. What are you going to have? How many decibel? Anybody want to put? Yeah. Hey, Terry's got it. Give that guy a prize. 3 dB. This is science, okay? You double your power, you get 3 decibel. You know how loud 3 dB is? Well, you're about to hear. Remember what I told you early on? I said I'm going to talk later about this. Listening, understanding things. Here we go. Listen intently. When I bring up this second microphone, it's going to be 3 dB louder. I could look at over my shoulder. You can see it. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. What? Do me this. Close your eyes. Listen. Mentally try to dissect that 3 dB going away. This could be $2,000. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to do it again. Here's both of them. 1, 2, 3. The human ear cannot detect 3 decibel. Oh, if we were in $1 million anechoic chamber and, you know, all the guys, things and so on. But I'm sure your station, I know mine certainly isn't. And this is a studio I built just to sound good, but not that good. So here you are. Let me tell you what to do with that $2,000. You ready? You give it to your wife so she can go buy more purses and shoes, and it'll do more benefit than your amplifier. But I can tell you, for just a few bucks, learn how to adjust your radio. You can get 10 dB out of this, which is in your radio, maybe a little more. And then you get into how to address a microphone. That always bugs me. Things like that. But before we go away from this, here's my favorite subject. I wish we had all night. There are so many subjects. I'm going to unplug one of these microphones. Okay. This magic little plug. And 3 is hooked to 2 is hooked to 3. Well, big deal, Heil. It sounds exactly the same. Yeah, well, it is. It's Paul Rogers' microphone, which I use on ham radio all the time, by the way. I love the articulation. Well, what is the big story here? The big story is they're out of phase. You know what happens when you have 2 signals out of phase? Nothing. The bomb could go off. Nothing. This one's going down. That one's going up. Nothing. They're working together. Oh my God, I wish we had hours. I love this subject. There's so much that we can do. So much. And yet nobody talks about it. Why? What is the big deal? It really bugs me when I see these companies putting out all this stuff, and they could be doing a lot more. Now, check this out. Let me unplug this. Another PR22. Yeah, I know it's different color. We by the way, we have a custom shop. You can do anything you want. We did one for the late Charlie Daniels. We were with him for 12 years, and we did him a great microphone. He was a wonderful American, and we did that for him. We can put your call letters on, really. Anyway, okay, here we go. Please, if you've been kind of like not paying attention, you will now. How does phasing work? Well, I just showed you what can happen, how signals can cancel. And how did Dr. Yagi, how did he build the Yagi antenna? He didn't have computers. He figured it out with a calculator, figuring out if he went out on a boom so far and built it so long, he could get gain. If he built another one in front, he could get more gain. But if he put one a little longer and so far behind the driven, he could get rejection. Why? Because it's out of phase. or it's in phase. That's how your Yagi works. I love antennas. I tell you, if you have up like a regular 33-foot long, 40-meter dipole made out of wire, no big deal. You know, if you took another one just like it and so far away you could get gain. Well, check this out. This is one amazing thing. Ready? We have just completed the installation of a 75-meter phased array antenna system consisting of a pair of coaxial dipoles mounted atop a pair of 55-foot telephone poles. We put them in an inverted V fashion, and the poles are 64 foot apart. These are 500 foot from the operating position, fed with RG213. In order to make the antennas directive from east to west, we use a delay line, a 43 foot here on 75 meters that's switched in and out of the driven element, either east or west. The downlead length is 126 foot. We take all of that coax, the downlead length, the 43-foot phasing delay line, and mounted them in a container, one of the plastic container boxes that we actually buried. And just the top of it shows. It's all sealed, so it's waterproof. But that's the way we get to switch all the components from 500 foot using one of the Amatron RCS 8V remote switches. It really works well. Take a listen to how we can get at least 10 to 20 dB difference east to west.
Like a lot of people do. Mine's usually 3 inches or so. That's just after I get done mowing it. And I know, probably, we get a dry day. I'm going to have to lay out there and mow. That's just all there is to it because, if you leave it that high, when it starts growing in it all, it gets looking ragged pretty quick. So it's to that point now, and
the system really performs on weak signals. Take a listen as we switch to the direction they're coming from. Also note the preamplifier makes no difference on 75 meters on this signal. The preamp will, of course, make the meter read higher, but in many cases, the preamplifier does not cause the weak signal to be more readable. Check it out.
yeah, well, I see they introduced big display on it, and I don't know if that is their form of portable, or what that is.
Bob, your mic's not working.
I went down those poles and I put a 40-meter phased array there, and it is incredible. And it's all because of phasing. I proved it to you with the microphones. Same thing. And so there are all these many things that rely on phasing. Back in October, I think it was, of 2006, we were sitting at Joe Walsh's kitchen table, and he said, "You need to build me a better microphone." I says, for? Well, I said, first I want a microphone that I don't have to just stick it in my mouth all the time. You know how it is. You see these guys, they can't move because the pattern's not right. And he said, then I don't want to hear all these guys behind me. And so I took that challenge. And what happened was the PR40, which is now has become one of the prominent microphones in the broadcast industry. It is the prominent in the podcast industry. I never intended for it to be on ham radio because it's a big, wide, full blown 28 hertz on the low end and 18 on the top. But it is. And you can use it. You just have to be able to balance the equalizer so you're not so tippy on the low end. Well, here's how I did it. First of all, I'll take this off. First of all, I can move around. I watch the screen. I can go 180 degrees around and it doesn't drop level or articulation. No other microphone will do that unless it's an Omni. And then you pick up the whole room everywhere. This is Omni on the front, but he wanted to get rid of the rear. Boy, did we. Watch this one and listen, because it's 40 dB down. Nobody's ever done this except a crazy little ham radio operator from Illinois. You ready? It's gone. Oh, it still works, but it's 40 dB down. How did you do that? Well, it's pretty simple. First of all, every microphone out there, I don't care whose it is, they all have 4 little holes. Bingo, right here, 3, 6, 9, 12, 4 little holes. And that's the entrance for the rear that's going to be out of phase. Big deal, not even close to enough. So first of all, I built a large diaphragm. Nobody's ever done this. A large dynamic diaphragm that worked. And I didn't put holes in it. I did put a humbucking coil on top, so if you pass it in front of a TV screen, the 60 cycles is gone. How did I do that? Because that 60 cycle winding is out of phase. It's wired out of phase. Ham radio at the rescue. But I opened the entire bottom of this microphone, so anything entering the back of the element's out of phase. And I sit it on top of what I call a signal collection tube. And all of these mids, lows, highs, they come screaming up the side into the bottom of the element. Bingo, out of phase. And it's really wonderful to watch some of the great engineers and people come to me asking me how I did it. I had one of the senior Shure engineer come to me at a show. He wanted to know how I did it because he said, we tried to do it for the SM7 and we never could get it to work. How'd you do it? My answer, ham radio. And he said, no, I mean, I said, ham radio. I'm not going to tell him my secrets at that time. It was all about ham radio for me. I'm sorry. And now, man, I see it everywhere. Sirius Radio just bought 250 of them. Recording studios and all kinds of other Fox News. These people they've gone crazy for this. Sheldon even has one. He has one just like this. He has a podcast on Sirius and had to have one of those pretty microphones. But hey, let's talk about things. You know, let's really get into some other things though. Time is, as I told you, I could be here all night and I don't want to do that with you. But I do want to take a little bit of help with how to use that microphone, because this is something that's very dear to my heart. You see, the situation there is guys will get a desk stand and they'll put this thing on their desk stand down here. What did we learn a while ago? Every time you double the distance, it's 6 dB. It's gone. So you say, oh, well, that's okay, Heil. You just shut up. We'll just come over here and turn up the gain. Well, then I sound like I'm in a roller rink. And so I know I hear people on the air like that. No. You lost your transient response. You lost your dynamic range. You lost a lot of your articulation just because you're more than 2 inches. Never want to be more than 2 inches. You certainly cannot do that. No more of this arm's length nonsense. And that's why a few years back, I was the first company to bring booms to us so you can put the microphone where you need it and you got your hands free. I did that for me, selfish me, because I'm always soldering. And so I had to do something right. And you don't want to speak really right into the microphone. You want to angle it a little because then the plosives are gone. What am I talking about? Plosives. All of us have this situation where we speak into a microphone. You exhibit air. Everybody does. Some a lot more than others. And yes, you can use foam windscreens. You have to be careful. Not all are created equal. Get the Radio Shack Walmart things for $2. This is truly acoustically transparent. I hear guys every once in a while, take that stupid muff off. It changes. If it's changing your audio, you don't have the right one. You want to put it on and it will not change. But anyway, plosives are very important, but you can do it just by learning how to talk into a microphone. And that's what's neat about a boom. This little boom I have on my desk. We have we call it an SB2 mounted to my desk, and it's really nice. But you speak into the side of a microphone and you won't have any problem. But the pattern of it is very important, and we make sure that the pattern is right, as I just proved to you. And the microphone elements, they will exhibit this pattern when we put it into our right handles and stuff. Too many lows are going to be difficult. Prove that to you. So you want to roll it off so all the power is at 2K, 3K, right in that window. And then guys will say, well, I'll just go get me one of them mixers. Well, when you buy a mixer, it's made for what? Music. Remember I told you about the 2-band EQ. The engineers set it at 80 hertz on the low end. Yeah, you can boost it and cut that. And the top's at 10K. If you'll notice the little in the bottom square from 100 to 300, you have nothing there. And so that's useless. What you want is one that's got a parametric mid. So you can move that around. That's what parametric means. You change the parameters of that filter. Not only can you boost or cut it, you can also move it around. But I developed all these elements. I was a very historic lab back in the late 70s, 80s. That's where I did the HC4s and 5s. And those are all used in our headsets and microphones because the contesters, they don't want to carry equalizers and things like that. So they want things that do the right thing for them, but they don't want to have to do anything like with all that other craziness. So you see, there's just so much that we can learn about our hobby, and there's so much more to do, but gosh, we'd be here all night. I do want to do one other thing before I daddle down the road and probably get on 75 meters. What are we going to do about the receiver? Ever think about that? Because every receiver I hear, from the $15,000 to the $400, sound terrible. What do you mean? That sounds great to me. No. Every one of them has 1 or 2 watts at 10% distortion. You didn't know that. Oh, that just sounds great. Yeah, I had noise. And you think that noise is distorted. No. If noise is crazy and then your distortion causes listener fatigue, the human being cannot stand to have listener fatigue. Distortion drives you nuts. And the receivers are full of it. So I said, I'm going to do something about this because there's so many other benefits and other things we can do. So I'm going to get back to this other microphone. This is going to be one you're going to take home with you, and you're not going to ever forget it. And I hope you do something about it. What we're going to do is I'm going to play you a little clip I made, a digital clip of my new product called the Parametric Receive Audio System. And there it is right there. By the way, W4KKP was a great friend of mine in the later parts of his life. He was the oldest living ham radio operator. If you ever want to have a dandy club meeting, have me back some night and I'll play you the interview that I did with him. It is absolutely fascinating because he was the guy that was tapped by the general to put the communications on Iwo Jima up in the dark and under bullets. It's an amazing story. And he did it. Anyway, he just passed away from COVID. He was 109, very active and on the air. Okay, I just have to pay a little homage to my buddy. Here's the deal. This is a parametric receive audio system. It has 3 filters. The high filters at 6K, bottom filters at 160, plus or minus each one of them. We're going to leave them flat for right now. But the mid is parametric. You can dial this from 400 to 4K, and that's the gain. I'm just going to set the gain. We'll just leave it right there. But I'm going to set it flat the way you hear it. So here we go. I'm going to play you this recording, and let's see what's happening. That's the way you hear him.
Here are a couple of usual.
We're going to come around to that so you can really hear a lot from him. Here's a sideband signal.
You can add some speech articulation just by adding some 2.5 mid-range.
Here's the way you hear him.
The 2 meter, a sideband, but they're just not, it's not the same as a rig built, just for 2 meter sideband.
Let's bring on some 2
the receivers will never compare.
That's just 2.5.
Kind of nice that, again, ICOM technology.
There it is, flat. Here comes another one, flat, the way you hear him.
They gave me 5 years seniority, but I was basically starting at the bottom, so many times people who spend...
You don't hear his articulation.
In the Navy
you
or
do hear.
The military is and retire, people say, well, you got it made. Flat. No, you don't.
Here comes the D104. It's all high, so it drives you crazy, especially on the sideband. Drives you crazy. So we can add some lows. Here we go.
I speeded up the tape, and sure enough, I can copy it. I had a lot of fun the other night.
There's the way you hear him.
About 30 words a minute, and so I speeded up the tape. And
remember what I said earlier, balance. Balance is so important. Here comes this guy. Here he is, the way you hear him. Listen to what happens when I bring it up. There it is, flat. Ready? There it is, flat.
Echo India 8 Bravo, Lima Bravo, PI ATLB calling in by.
I don't think we have to go any further. It's an amazing product. And I am so happy to be able to help so many, because there are some other things. You see these? Those are 2 headphone jacks. So you can have an operator and a logger, or left side, right side balance. Those are separate amps. So if you're having a hearing imbalance, no problem anymore. Bring it up and the EQ follows that. Wow. I get all kinds of beautiful reports from guys that said I give them their radio back because they now can have a balance with this device. Last but not least is a record out. You don't need a bunch of Y cords and all that. Plug that into your computer. That's how I made those recordings. This speaker is totally amazing. It's Paul Klipsch all over again. He taught me so much. We built thousands of speaker cabinets in the rock and roll days, and he taught me how to do that. How to take a speaker outside in free air, get the cone resonance, then you treat the cabinet to that resonance so we don't have any phase distortion. 3.5-inch titanium tweeter, and the back panel is a 25 watt at 0.1%. So it's the real deal, and it doesn't cost very much. But again, there's just, we could go on all night with things. And I hope you guys have followed some of the pine board things we did on Ham Nation. That was quite a project. We had over 1,000 people, and they're still building it. It became the cover award of January 2019. And we put a lot of guys on the air with AM, and they built their own transmitter. The great diagrams that came with it, W4IQN did those. Aren't they something? They're better than Heathkit. You don't need a schematic. You just get a piece of pine board and do that, and away you go. So, and as you can probably figure, I'm a nut. I'm a nut for building, and I want everybody to try to follow it. But we're working on a lot of other new products. We got I got a new headset for the handy talkies. You guys, I mean, I listen to you guys. You guys say handy talkies are terrible. These headsets are just junk. Well, we did something about it, and have various ones for various headsets and various handy talkies. Really cool. But again, this you just got to listen to what you guys need, and we try to do it. I'm really proud of the new little BM17. The BM17 is a headset that we developed for the guys that they're out on the course of trekking and backpacking and so on. And man, this thing is great. And did it in yellow too, because we have a lot of guys doing things with this CD stuff. So we're really, really listening, and we do things about it. That's the main thing. I want you to realize what we've done with cable here in the end. Cable, I hate cable. Everything. You go home and you look at the cable on your microphone, and what you're going to find is it's about 26 gauge wire, and the little connector for it was made by Foster. They started in 1960 for the CB world, and it's a junky little connector. Yes, it's junky. This is why. Got a little bitty thingy here. Try to put that in a TS2000 that's recessed. You need a pair of needle nose. And none of them, not a one of them, the cable will fit the holder. They have to put some kind of rubber or tape or something, and that all goes away. Why not make it with the cable? So I did. I made my own cable because cable is so important, and none of these guys are doing cable properly. First of all, it's 18 gauge, not 26. Two of them inside a 100% shield. It solders like a dream. And when you go to pick it apart, you don't end up with two little strands. You end up with the whole thing. And if you have a balanced line microphone, that microphone should be balanced. All the rigs are, but they don't use it. I know the secret because I helped develop the inputs of many of them. So you can use our cable, and we pick up the balanced input to all the ICOMs and Kenwoods and Yaesus. That way you cut down on a tremendous amount of RFI. But notice the blue and the green, the red. What's going on with those two guys? They're outside of the shield. Why did I do that? Well, I could never figure out why the manufacturers allowed it to happen, but I told you, they don't build their stuff. When you have DC on these two and AC on these two, and you put them in the same shield, you're just inducing all of that right into your mic input that's very sensitive. It's RF sensitive, and it just drives you crazy because a lot of RF is done right there. Separate them, bingo. the DC is outside of the shield and it doesn't care. And I've solved more RFI problems just by having a guy change his cable. But we make a special microphone for ICOM. I guess you guys probably know about that. You can't just slap anything into an ICOM because they have a little bit lower gain and they like to use electrodes. And so they furnish phantom power down the line. They've got 8 volts coming up to the mic and they have audio going back down. AC and DC on the same wire. That's pretty cool, huh? But there again, you have a situation that you can't just jab any microphone into it. So Dr. Inouye asked me to build one, and we did. That's what's sitting right here. It's called the ICM, almost spells ICOM. Comes in silver, it comes in that one. And it fits on a boom and comes with the cable because I don't want you trying to put it in anything else. It only fits an ICOM because it's called an ICM. But man, does it work barefoot. You don't need anything. You dial up a little bit of treble, roll off a little low end, bingo. But there's so much to do, man. I'd love to come back some night and spend all night on how to adjust your radio. A lot of people don't know. And so there's some signals that could be improved out there, but who's to tell them? Manufacturers don't want to do it. And I love doing that. I do some of these. We'll do one of these and then they'll come back and do another 40, 50 minutes, not this long, but just on one subject. I'm doing one next week on antennas and stuff like that. And closing all this off, I'm very honored that I received a honorary PhD degree from Missouri University recently. Here's a kid that barely made it through high school, barely. And here I was, honored by Mizzou. My stepson took him 16 years to get his PhD. The curator that night when I did this speech for the kids and all, I said, yeah, but Heil, it took you 50 years. And that's probably right. But I'm so blessed that all this happened. And the other thing that really was something was Heil Sound. About 10 years ago, we were asked to be a part of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Museum, and we're the only manufacturer there. Everybody there are artists, and they picked us out because we did all of the many things that helped. They were not just a sound system, but the quad, the monitors, the microphone, all this kind of stuff that we built. And so again, when they told me that they were going to do it, they wanted to know what they should put up on the board, to tell the story. I said, well, you can do whatever you want, but I wanted to tell you one thing. I won't allow you to do it unless you put somewhere in there that I learned it from ham radio. So ham radio's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I guess. But I get all these engineers. We'd go into these large arenas and stuff all those many years. And that was the first thing, hey, wow, where'd you learn? Where'd you go to school? I didn't. Ham radio. No, you don't understand. I said, where'd you learn all that? I said, ham radio. Well, you don't. I said, no, you don't understand. I learned it from amateur radio, and I would walk away. They just don't get it, do they, everybody, how special our hobby is and how special it makes each one of us. I'm very honored to be here. I hope I get to come back and pick out a subject and we'll really dive into it. I hope I've been not too long, but we can come back and correct that. Any questions? I'd love to answer questions.
This is Bob in New York. Do you hear me, Bob?
Yeah.
I'll start out, and I'm going to go back to your roots in sound. I've spent many, many years in sound lift for rock bands and so forth, and sidelight. And I wonder, did you ever know Donald Leslie? Did you ever use the 122 when you handled the B3?
Don was a good friend, and his hobby, if you didn't know this, was electric trains. We'd all go over to his house and play with his electric trains. No, he was a great friend, and I did a lot with him in that he and the Gulbranson people, you know, they made organs. They got together and they wanted to build an organ that would sound like a pipe organ, but it was all electronic. And it was really kind of cool stuff. And then I was involved in that because he would come to the Holiday Inn where I was playing, and I had a pipe organ there that I built in the restaurant behind glass. And he would come and take note of my registrations and my sounds I was getting for this new Gulbranson Rialto. You'll notice closely if you guys are organists, that's a Wurlitzer console that came from the Chicago area, this State Lake and State Street Theater. And the manuals are a Hammond, 3 of them. There's 3 Hammond organ manuals. You can tell by the little 4 tablets at the percussion. And they fed 2 Leslies, and they were all in stereo, in and out of phase. And he was mesmerized by all this crap. And he and Dick would come in, the guys from Gulbranson, and listen and do some recordings, and they ended up being some of the bases of the organs that he built. But yeah, he was a great guy. I hated to see him leave so early. He was very knowledgeable about the organ world.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I realized that I might apologize to my colleagues, my amateur radio colleagues. Those of you who are unfamiliar with it, Leslie enclosures are noted. It's one of its features for a rotating set of speaker horns and some very complex audio crossovers. So they gave a very characteristic sound to some of the bands that you were familiar with. The one that I always was intrigued with was Felix Cavallari from the Young Rascals,
Yeah,
who really made tremendous use of it.
Many of those records you hear were my organs. They would rent them from me, and especially A Whiter Shade of Pale.
Yep.
There is hardly anything better than that solo he does.
Yeah.
But anyway, a lot of, because they knew that my organ, that my B3s, when I'd rent them to them, they were special. I mean, I had tweaked them and got them just right, and they were different, and they loved them, and so did I.
But as an audio handler, they were a bear to load on and off trucks without damaging the veneer.
Yeah. Well, what you did there is you built anvil cases for them. That's what we did, even the B3. But yeah, they were heavy boogers, B3s. I was part of my deal is I was the first guy to cut them in half, and I made them portable. And that was a big deal. I became pretty famous about that. There was another 3 manual Hammond that I built with a bunch of other things in it. So yeah, I love all those things and still do. In fact, when I finish with you guys, that's where I'm going, in about 20 feet over there. I've got to record a couple of shows, but I still play. I love theater organ. And it's been the basis of how I learned to listen. And listening is so important. So important. But I appreciate you talking about my friend, Don Leslie. Do you know who George Wright is?
I'm going to say no right now because something did not pop into my head.
Okay. Yeah. He was the greatest theater organist ever. And he was a great teacher for me. And he, Leslie, when he closed that, he had a Quonset hut for one of his manufacturing plants. And when he closed that plant, George took it over and built his Pasadena, what he called theater organ in it. It was the best theater organ ever, had the best of the best. But Don was involved in that too. But yeah, good stuff, good memories.
I have George Wright's album called Let George Do It. One of his early albums, just really impressive, from the 60s or late 50s.
Yep. That's how I learned to play.
Quite a legend, sure.
Yep.
Wow.
I learned to play from him. I was very honored that he would come by the restaurant when he was in St. Louis, and then we'd get together and parties and stuff that everybody'd have, and he'd take me off and show me some tricks and help me style things. He was a great guy. I listened to his every day. That's all I listened to.
Bob, I just to change the subject a little bit, I did build one of the pine board kits. It's one right here.
Okay.
I had it I have it here in an enclosure, but
Look at that. Wow. All right.
Nice.
That's terrific.
it does work. I did test it last fall, but it's a little bit apart now. But it was fun and
Kev, that's
I
great.
learned a lot.
Yeah, well, that was the idea. I mean, we had people, I had a girl from Texas. She called me one day and said, what kind of soldering iron should I get? I mean, that's how far back she was. She didn't know a thing. And she built the power supply, and then she built the EQ. She was having trouble with it, so I had her send it up to me, and I corrected a few things. But anyway, everybody, we had wives, we had kids. We had a couple of kids that were like 12 years old with their dad, stuff like that.
And one of the guys here on WB2LXC, Russ Greenman, he actually helped build that coil. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, I can.
But that's a 14 gauge wire
Yeah.
on a PVC
That's,
piece.
yeah.
He
Cool.
actually wound it for me so it would work.
All right.
I found difficulty purchasing it. So he helped me get that built.
Sure. Get out the old grid dip meter and find out. Oh, thanks for telling me. That's great. I love it. I love it.
Hey, Bob, this is Terry Saunders. I just wanted to say thanks for the whole presentation. It was great listening to you. I was aware of a good amount of your history already, but it was, I guess I'll say, you've probably heard this a million times, but using a PR40 right now, it's been my go-to mic for all of my ham radio work and now also on my PC for years and years. It's great.
Sure.
I'm asked all the time, what do I use? I tell them proudly, I use a Heil PR40.
Right.
And,
Well, thank you.
but it was interesting hearing you talk about the Colonel Paul Klipsch there. I'm a big fan of Klipsch. I have a whole home theater full of La Scalas and Heresies, and all driven by Sunfire amps. And so I'm just an audio nut when it comes to Klipsch. And so I was not aware of the link between you and Paul Klipsch. So that was interesting to hear as well. But thanks again for everything.
Well, there's a story about that. There's always a story with me about everything. I guess I have been so blessed to be put into so many places with some of the incredible people. He called me one day and I about dropped the phone because I'm going, whoa, this is God on the other end of this phone. What can I do for you, Mr. Klipsch? And he said he wanted to come and see this crazy kid that had this 10,000 watt PA because he was an efficiency freak. And there was no way that he wanted to hear about wasting power. And so he did. Well, I went to see him many times, but one of the times I got the contract for Jeff Beck. Now, Jeff, he was always an instrumentalist and still is, but he found Bobby Tench. He said, okay, we're going to take this new band on the road. So he comes to me. And we want you to build a PA with good monitors, but they got to be big and loud. And he said, I want you to do that for me. Okay. And I did. I go down to Hope, Arkansas. You're going to love this. And I sat in front of his desk. What do you want, young man? I said, I need you to build me some La Scalas. Okay. How many? 4. Okay. However, I want them with 12-inch speakers. He comes flying over that desk. I thought he was going to choke me if he would have got a hold of me. And he started, there's no way you want to do that. You're going to lose all the low end. And he starts giving me all of the parameters of what was going to happen if I put 12-inch speakers. After he calmed down, I said, I just want them for monitors. He didn't know what I meant. He wasn't into rock and roll. It's why he came to me. He just would not listen to me for a while. Well, one of his guys came in and said, no, boss, he really does want to build these with 12-inch. Well, okay, we're going to do it. But don't you tell anybody I did it. And I still have one of
15 or nothing.
That's right. That's right. And I still have one of them. They were miraculous. I took 4 of them right in front of Jeff. Just right, in a little semicircle. Man, they were great. And of course, they were out of phase and they didn't feed back. So there's your La Scala story.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I love showing people. It's like you'll take a pair of folded woofers like that, and it's like just driving with 2 or 3 watts, and you can just about peel the paint off the room and sound excellent doing it. And people are like, "Oh my God, what are you driving this with?" It's like a couple of watts. You don't need a lot of power when you have efficiency, and they sound good doing it too.
Yeah, that's great. Very good, Terry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else got a?
No one else jumps in. This is Bob again. I'm just curious, did the PR22 replace the PR20, and is it fundamentally better design?
Well, the PR20 is, there are some guys doing recordings or whatever, they want an absolutely flat microphone, which that is. And the PR22 has that little rise.
I found the PR20s had problems with handling noise. I mean, they were fine, like if you had them on a mic stand.
Yeah, right. That's what they were made for.
Oh, okay. Thanks. I appreciate the.
And we solved that. We solved that with the 22 because Paul Rogers wanted to use it as a hand microphone.
Oh, I see. So you were driven by a customer to accommodate a design.
Oh,
for
there's
usage.
no question. The PR40. The
Yeah.
PR35. The PR35 was another one of those that we were guided. And Carrie Underwood used it, when she won the award, what was it, the show, the Idol.
American Idol.
They went out on tour, the winners of that, if you remember. They'd take them out on tour, and these are kids that never been out on tour. And the sound company that went, I'd worked with them before, and they used all of our microphones, and she gravitated to the 35, of course. Now, almost everybody out there is using 35s. We also make a 35 capsule that fits on the Shure wireless. And almost all these, I see a lot of award shows using our 35 capsule. And it works really, really good. And that was all because of Joan Baez. I had built a PR30, which is a PR40, but doesn't have that extreme low end and has this gorgeous mid-range top end. And I really looked at it for like violins and things like that, but now it's doing all kinds of stuff. But anyway, I built 2 of them, and I gave the prototype to Jason Robain, who was her sound man. They were coming through St. Louis, and he had done other prototype things for me. So I went over to the pageant club here in St. Louis, and I gave them to him. I said, tell me what you think. And about a week later, he called me, he said, whoa, he said, this microphone is great. Wait a minute. He said, I got a new job. Did you know? I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm Joan Baez's FOH guy in front of the house. I said, really? Congratulations. Joan wants to talk to you. I said, do what? I never talked to Joan. I never had worked with her. And she picked up the phone and she says, darling, a girl could fall in love with this microphone. You got to build it in a hand microphone for me. And so I did. And if you really want to know the whole end of it, this is kind of cool. It's the very honest to God truth. I had built a microphone for Tentec for a while, the Studio One. It was a little bigger handle, and it would fit the bigger diaphragm of the 30, because that was a 1.5 inch, and it would fit inside that 3-inch barrel. So I took that Tentec mic and I put a big black tape across the Tentec name, and it had the first PR35 in it, and she will not give it back. I saw her here year before last. She come through St. Louis. It's the first time we met. Oh, we had a big hug fest and really great. And she's got a real 35 now. She has all along, but the 35 would not be there if it wasn't for Jason and Joan. And I mean, I can be here all night because I didn't build things for me and say, okay, I'm Bob Heil. By God, you're using it. That's the way Shure does it. That's the way Electro Voice, all these guys do it. Oh, here it is. It's great. No, I want to know what they need, because I understand I'm a musician too. And I know that feeling you get right here in your stomach when you're in front of a crowd and something isn't right. And so I've always worked with artists, always, from Joe and ZZ and just all the way down Slash, and these are great friends. And you look at Slash and you say, oh, he's the kindest spoken, softest spoken, best read guy I've ever met. He's just beautiful. He and my wife really get along good because she reads a lot. And I listen to them and I build stuff for them. And in turn, everybody else finds out about it, and bingo, we're off to the races. So that's how it all works. And working on this thing now for ICOM to make the 705 come alive. So we did it with the ICM, but we want to do a little different with that small rig. But I'm really very blessed about all of this, and it would never happen if my high school chum guided me to ham radio back in 1956.
I'm a child of the 60s, so it'd be unusual for me to tell you how much I love Saul.
Yeah.
My son turned me on to Guns N' Roses, but their sound was always so fantastic. I didn't realize your part in that. So thanks for sharing that story.
Well, they're all, you look at them, the persona that they put out there on the street. I shouldn't tell you this because it's some of their secrets. And it's really not what they are. And when you get them away from all the drug dealers and all that nonsense and have a nice meal and you sit down as a real person, every one of them are just absolutely marvelous. They all have their own personalities, and I'm blessed that they call me a friend. But they also know that if they ask me to do something, I can make it happen, kind of. Once in a while we fail, but it'll be a step to the road we finally want to get to. Golly.
Hey, Bob.
Yes.
Larry here with the. What do you your opinion on this? I've got a Heil HM12 I picked up from an estate, and currently I've got a 756 Pro, an ICOM. Are they going to work together?
Nope.
No.
Especially the 756. It's of the earlier vintage, and man, it's down 15 dB. But I can tell you how to solve it for less than $100. You plug an ICM in it, and it's like, whoa, because it's designed. You see, the ICM, the electret elements, they have an FET transistor in them. Did you know that?
No, I knew nothing about it.
That's how they work. They have a diaphragm, and the FET is hooked to the center of that, and it accentuates that FET, which turns it into good audio, greater audio than it would have had passively, because they can charge that diaphragm through the FET.
Oh, okay.
And that's why you have to have phantom power. But with the ICOM stuff, you don't need anything. You just plug in that ICM and beautiful. The 12 was designed as a really nice, low cost, and for things, I use it on the some of the 2 meter stuff. It's a great microphone. It's a very interesting microphone. It has a very interesting element in it. It's an open face. I built this element at the instruction of Fox News. They wanted a microphone for interview that sounded great and didn't have a lot of handling noise and was good for plosives, and that was it. And later on, after that contract was done, my wife, Sarah, who owns Heil Sound, she comes up, but she doesn't know anything about electronics, but she knows things about the market. And she said, we need a microphone that's low cost that really sounds good. And wait a minute, we had all these elements from that contract and we don't have to redo them. So the cost got real low, because that microphone would be about $250 should we have to restart and do it all. But we had plenty of elements, so we can do that. Yeah, you'll love it. I love that ICOM rig. You just plug in an ICM and away you go.
All right. Very good.
Hey, Bob, James N2UZQ. How you doing this evening?
We're good.
I just want to say a couple things. And to Larry's answer, I have something here for you.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I had emailed you a few years back, and I was asking questions about audio with a 746 before the Pro Edition came out.
Yeah.
And of course, you suggested that microphone. I still have the microphone. Unfortunately, I sold the radio. In fact, the person I sold it to is hiding around here someplace. But that kind of goes into what I wanted to briefly say, and I wanted to thank you. First of all, anytime I've had a question, I've emailed, and you personally have responded to a few of them. So I want to thank you for that, taking that type of time out of your schedule to answer questions. The second thing is many years ago, and I've told this story a couple times on the air and what have you before you were having this presentation. I'm a member of this club. I'm also a member of the Schenectady Museum Amateur Radio Association, and we always do Kids Day in January down at the museum. And the one year we were not finding anybody to talk to, we were calling CQ, and somebody responded, and it was a astronaut down in NASA. That was pretty cool. The kids were all excited about that.
Sure.
And then we went back to CQing, and you actually answered. And the kids were like, "Oh, great! This that sounds really cool." And the rest of us who were down there helping out, of course, we're operators. We know who you are. It's like you're speaking to Bob Heil. But I just wanted to say thank you for getting on the air, even during Kids Day, and helping spread the word of amateur radio and trying to help out. It was really appreciated.
I love those things. When I hear those special events, I'm on them, man. I'm on the air quite often, and I'm in the mornings. I'm on 3885 every day over there with my Harvey Wells and whatever. But I love AM. But I'm look at all this stuff behind me, and I do this because ICOM will send things to me as they have the 705, and I have a job to do, and I'll be up here till midnight again. I'm just working like crazy because there's a few little things about it that I have to make sure we do right. But anyway, I do these things for the manufacturers because they finally learned that the people that build these radios in their factories, you almost have to be a ham when it comes to the real fine microphones and speakers and cabling and all that kind of stuff. So that's what I do, and I'm very happy and proud to be there for them because we all win. That's for sure. But that's great. I'm glad the kids had fun, and anytime I can help you, I get emails from a lot of people a lot of clubs that would say, "Hey, we're going to have a Kids Day or this, and meet us on this frequency," and that kind of thing. So that all works good. Thank you. Thanks for doing it with the kids.
Bob, a couple quick questions for you. Have you played the organ down in Schenectady at Proctor's?
No, I haven't. They have one in the theater?
They do. It's a pipe organ.
Wurlitzer.
They call it Goldie.
It's a big 1923, I think, Wurlitzer. Maybe Jim Silva knows the details.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right. Wurlitzer, nicely refurbished, somewhat modernized. It's got every literally bell and whistle.
Yeah, that's right.
Bob would really make it wail.
Yeah.
So whenever you're in town, I'm sure we can arrange for you to have a shot at that.
Yeah. Before all this COVID nonsense, I'd get around to playing some of this stuff, but now I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But I love the Wurlitzer's been doing it since I was 15, and what you see here is a very interesting instrument. Lynn Larson, who is one of the prolific, he was the protege of George Wright. And I mean, he is George Wright over and under and everything else. He went to Allen, Oregon about 12 years ago, and they went all around the world they sampled strings from an organ in Paris. Then they came back here. He had played the concerts and all these different. He might have played Schenectady, and maybe it has the best oboe. Went to the Fox in St. Louis. It had the best tibias, so on and so forth. And they sampled 24 sets of pipes. And what you have is an exact Wurlitzer console with all of the mechanics, but the generators speaking through 12 speakers above me here on a loft. I built this studio for that organ in my video studio and ham radio. Is absolutely stunning. I've had it now for this one I've had for about 11 years. Lynn came here personally and voiced it before when they delivered it, before they signed off on it, because it was the second one they built. And oh man, I get on it and I can't quit. I'm there for hours instead of minutes. But you know, we do a theater organ show. You might want to write this down, every Saturday night at 7:00. That would probably be 8:00 your time on WTWW. That's that 200,000 watt shortwave station in Nashville. I bet you guys hear it like crazy. And I do a thing called Theater Organ Under the Arch, because we're just underneath the St. Louis Arch, every Saturday night about 8:00. And I love doing them. But I do a lot of other things. We're getting ready to launch a YouTube channel with all of I got a lot of stuff up there now, but we're going to conjugate it into all of what's going on there. But dyed in the wool Wurlitzer theater organ, let me tell you.
How about that?
Yeah, that one in Schenectady that's called Goldie is a Wurlitzer. I think it's circa, I might have mistaken. I think it's like 1930 or so, or 31, but it's a 318. So it has the similar arrangement to the picture that you just showed.
Yeah, it would be the same console. Yeah, that's great.
And the pipes are throughout the lofts in both the left and right side of a very historical, recently restored, magnificent theater.
Oh, that's great. Glad they're keeping it going.
Yep. So Bob Heil, are you a member of the American Theater Organists?
Oh, absolutely.
Society?
Oh,
Okay.
absolutely.
Did you happen to go to the Buffalo convention?
No, I don't go to any of those shows, even when they were going, because I'm always busy out somewhere doing my own stuff. And that usually they're a week long. And so I don't ever go to them, but they have some fantastic people, especially some of the youngsters that are 15, 16 years old, and they're just killing it. They're just great.
Well, my wife's a church organist, and it's a wonderful thing. She's got a nice pipe organ by a local organ builder, Len Carlson. And she dragged me to the American Guild of Organists annual meeting in Buffalo in 2019, and it happened to coincide with the ATOS meeting. I got a lot of input.
Well,
more power to you.
Shay's there in Buffalo is a very historic and great instrument. Well, that's great. Super.
That was featured. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
This is Frank Hackert. I'm in charge of the maintenance of the organ at Proctor's. You might be familiar with it. It came from the Chicago area, west of Chicago, in Aurora, Illinois. Was in the Paramount Theater there. It's a late production. The 1 year only single action chests, if you're familiar with those, 1931.
Yeah.
And it was maintained for several years by John Sang.
Oh, yes. I knew Johnny well. Miss him. He was a character, I'll tell you.
Him, Kay Maccabee, that bunch from Chicago area.
Yes.
It went through private hands for a while with Terry Clevin and Claude Newman.
Yeah.
And then it was purchased when Proctor's was undergoing renovation in the late 70s and early 80s.
I see.
By Golub family here in Schenectady, which is a supermarket outfit. And we installed it in Proctor's. It's a 318 Balaban two style.
Yeah.
And It's in pretty decent shape. We've got all Ztronics relay
Oh yeah.
and capture system on it.
Yeah, that's the way
But
to do
but
it.
turning it back to audio though, that being at the Fox, which is a mammoth instrument, and all the great artists that have played there. Have you ever done organ recordings with all your knowledge of microphones and audio systems to try to really capture the presence and frequency range produced by pipe organ?
Well, I've done a couple albums back in the day, and I also have, what have I got now? 3 CDs going, and I'm getting ready to put a lot of this digitally up there. But but I got to tell you, the best thing I can do. I don't have a camera that I could show you. I have 6 of my microphones up here because there's a subwoofer channel and then solo channel, main channel. I have 2 PR30s on each of those and a pair of PR40s on the low end. I've tried everything. I am just absolutely adamant about how dumb, stupid, awful condensers are. They should be taken from the earth. They're too sensitive. They pick up everything. They have no pattern and do not, oh my gosh, don't even think about dropping them. And I can put them to shame with the PR30. And so I have, like I said, 4 of them here and 2 40s, and the recordings are great. And I'm really proud of this little studio. I built it for that, so it's worked out well. But I'm sure that you've seen some great things if you're working with the that one that's in that Balaban. That's great, and it's late production, so you have the best technology that Wurlitzer had at the time. That's important.
It's a lot easier to maintain a single action chest.
Yeah.
Your PR40 goes down to 20 hertz on the low end.
Yeah, 28.
So that captures the 16 foot, but you're still missing the 32 foot.
It doesn't.
Your Lynn Larson Allen there, that has a 32 foot on, or at least 132 foot.
But things about this. Audio does not do this. Gosh, wouldn't it be neat if they did? It rolls off. And it might be an octave down, it's 3 dB down. You can't hear 3 dB. It's still there, really.
You can feel it though.
Oh, sure you can. And
we put 2 SVS speakers on a Lynn Larson 324 at the Franklin Delano Roosevelt High School. My brother was an Allen organ dealer.
Oh, cool.
And there was quite a breeze comes off those SVS speakers when you hit that low C note on the 32 foot. I mean, it'll make your pants wiggle.
You got that right.
So, I mean, that's really hard to capture.
Yeah, there's me at the Fox in St. Louis. I still play occasionally, of course, before COVID. But that's the original 1929 console. It got repainted. The original one was gold lame, but they redid that in '82. But they keep it up, man. They got one fellow that's all he does still even today, and he maintains it, and he does it in really grand style. And there it was. There is 1950. This is 1956. But that's the same console, only it was gold. They repainted it when they redid the Fox. But
by the way, that Jack Mullman has played at Proctor's.
Jack lives about, I don't know, maybe 8 miles from me, 10 miles from me in O'Fallon, Illinois. We're in Belleville, Illinois.
I attended his birthday party at Radio City Music Hall.
Yeah.
Quite an event.
Yeah.
First time you got to hear that organ in a private setting, without a regular audience, so you could actually hear it.
Yeah.
And they had the amplifiers going in the chambers, so you could hear all of those subtle, quiet concert ranks that are never heard.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Walt Stroni did a nice job there. Oh, good stuff. Well, that's great. Yeah, super.
Now, if you're ever in town, that you're welcome to to stop by and take a look.
You're the guys. That's right.
Mm.
Well, I sure appreciate this. I probably done way too much in too much time, but I hope you learned something. I hope it was entertaining, and I
Yep.
hope we get to come back. And who knows, we can maybe do something, pick out a subject. That's what I'm doing now. After I do one of these biggies, we come back and pick out a title and talk about whatever. And that I love doing that. Really get down to brass tacks.
So Bob, have you done a microphone for like the headset for like the computers?
No, because here's the deal. All computers, if you really want to do it, all computers have a real trashy audio front end. I don't care how many condensers, I don't care how many electrics, you still have that junky front end. That's what they want you to do. To go out and buy a $22 thing at Walmart, stick it in there. Okay. Here's the way you do it. This is what you're listening to. It's an Alesis. And Alesis builds some really cool little mixers. $100. It's 8 channels. 4 of them are balance line in. It has parametric mids. That's how I was showing you. If I want to take the mids out, I can. And it has parametric mids on several of the channels. And it's really a wonderful piece. It has outputs. I'm driving a pair of JBL monitors for my playback here, listening to you guys and me. Kodak in and out. But it has a USB out. You plug it into the old Mac. Bingo. Then you can plug one of the good, dynamic, balanced microphones in. You have monitor out. You have 2 other. If you want to record something, you can do that. It is an amazing way to put audio into a computer, and it's not very expensive.
Yeah, I've used a multi-mix 4, which is like $100.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. It's really, really great. And all of the hosts on Ham Nation have an Alesis that I bought for them all because I wanted this to have good audio. Because when we started that, Leo kind of left it up to each one, and man, some of them had some junky condensers and cheap things to pay $30 for. No, we're not going to do that. Our reputation is not going to handle that. So we didn't. And it really works great. And then for switching, if you don't know about this, if you ever need it, Black Magic, they build a lot of videos things. They got this little thing that's $200, and it's a switcher, a video switcher. You can run some audio through it, but I don't do that. It's not good enough for that. But I can have 4 cameras. Only the 4th one is my laptop, where I have all of these different slides and stuff. That's how I do my productions. But the other 3 cameras are what I have. It is wonderful. So you have a complete studio for not very much money if you're doing any video at all. That's the way to do it.
You call it Black Magic?
Black Magic, that's the company. And the piece is called ATEM. I don't know what that stands for. Mini. ATEM Mini. Go to B&H Photo. They got it.
Yeah. I was about to ask you about that, and this is in no way being critical, but I thought that when you switched to your computer generated slides, they were, at least on my monitor, not of the same quality that when they're directly taken from the digital input that the Zoom application uses when you share. I was having difficulty reading some of the print. It could be my aging eyes or whatever. Again, it's not a criticism, but I was curious how you were doing the switching. You know, I've used it on my computer using the Open Broadcaster suite, but that's a hardware switcher, and that's worth looking at as well.
Yeah, I've been using this, well, since it came out here, I don't know, maybe it was last year. And I love it. It allows me to do things that I normally couldn't do. So But no,
Well,
I'm
we're
sure
gonna-
there's better ways to do all of this stuff.
We're certainly you're gonna be on our very, very short list, Bob, for next year for club meetings. And we certainly appreciate your taking your entire evening for us. My goodness, how can we thank you?
No problem, Jim. I appreciate the invite, and I'm back anytime you want, man. I'm here for you.
That's great. That's great. You might see a jump in your sales. I wrote down a whole bunch of notes of things that I just have to buy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, you and me both.
Would you like for me to spend the last 5 or 8 minutes and fire up the organ?
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be wonderful.
Okay.
And I'm still recording, so
Yeah, send that to me. I'd appreciate it.
I will.
7-3, everybody. This has been more fun for me than it is you, maybe. I really appreciate your time. I just love sharing this hobby. I think it shows. It's everything inside me for 65 years, and I really need to pass this on, and hopefully everybody kind of learn something. So we're going to shut all
You
this
need
off,
to-
and I'll meet you over there in just a couple of minutes.
73.
73, Bob. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you very
73,
much,
thank
Bob.
you.
All right, now let's hope he turns on his microphones
Yeah, right.
so we can hear.
Everybody make sure you're muted.
Yep, good point.
Wow.
Levels okay?
That was great.
Wow.
Fantastic.
Okay.
That was
Beautiful.
absolutely awesome. Thank you.
That was like a
Thank
whole
you
I've
very
got
much.
chills, man. I've got chills.
Go to
Fantastic.
put YouTube/Bob Heil. There should be a bunch there, and a lot more coming.
Thank you.
great.
Very nice.
Good. Okay, well, thanks again, Bob.
Thanks, Bob. And if you guys don't know, you can hear him on Ham Nation every Wednesday evening.